There are plenty of chairs on the front row. Good afternoon and welcome to another series of the Highland Speaker Series. We are very pleased to have you with us this afternoon. As many of you already know, this series was developed in honor of the late Morris Bill Collins, who was the first director of the John T. Stennis Institute. And Dr. Collins would be very proud of this group this afternoon, and certainly, Amy, he would be very proud to have you with us. He always really wanted us to have prestigious and important speakers for our campus, for our students and our faculty. And certainly this afternoon's speaker is a very prominent individual, and we very much appreciate your being here. We are also honored to have with us this afternoon Dr. Charles Lee, our president of the university. And Dr. Lee, thank you for being with us. If you'll look at your program, rather than having a lot of introductions this afternoon, we'll just follow the program there. Dr. Lee will bring some remarks. Then we will have Marty Wiseman, who will introduce our speaker. And following the speaker's presentation, if you have questions, please raise your hand and feel free to ask questions. And then Brian Jolly will close our meeting and invite you to the reception. So please enjoy being here in the library. We enjoy having you. And I'll now turn the mic over to Dr. Lee.
Let me add my welcome to you on behalf of the Mississippi State family. You really are in for a treat this afternoon. We have a very shy, quiet person who never ventures her opinion in public, and so I'm anxious to see what her opinions are. So I'm really looking forward to that. The first morning of the first day that I worked for Mississippi State, my boss, who is the Vice President for Agriculture, said the first thing that we need to do is to take you to have a session with Senator Stennis. And so on that first morning, we went down to DeKalb to the little brick house on the county square there at the courthouse, and I met him and became instantly one of his fans. And to my continuing amazement, he showed a similar attention to me. He used to call me and say, Dr. Lee, I have a few hours tomorrow afternoon. If I could come up, could you show me what's going on that's new at Mississippi State? And I, of course, was thrilled to do that, particularly because all my previous professional life I had known about the McIntyre-Stennis Forest Research Bill and the funding that it provided to forestry schools, and at that time I was running the forestry school. So when Bill Collins came along, it was no surprise that the senator said to him, we want you in Mississippi, because Bill Collins had a lot of the same philosophies about life and public service and good government and integrity, the kinds of virtues that our speaker today holds so well. And so they were an instant pair. And every time I had the pleasure of being in their mutual presence, it was like they had been friends all of their lives, even though Bill Collins had come here, as I recall, from the University of Georgia, where he had been involved in helping then Governor Carter reorganize all of state government in Georgia. And of course, not everybody was happy with the reorganization, so I think Bill was kind of happy to move over this way a little bit and get away from all of that. But Bill made a tremendous contribution to the startup of what has become our focus here on public policy formation and having people in, such as our speaker today, all of whom help to generate ideas, to synthesize solutions, to argue and fuss and fight about the formation of that kind of public policy which best fits this state or this county or a municipality at this particular time. While I was at Texas A&M, I had a small role in the startup of the Bush School, And the people who influenced my thinking about what that ought to be most were Senator John Stennis and Bill Collins from our conversations here in those years about what public policy is. You're in for an extraordinary treat today. Ms. Whitten is tremendously well informed about the issues of the day in our state and in our country. During her service on the board, she has been a clear thinker about the big picture and the future of this state, a strong believer in the role of the board in setting direction and policy and hiring presidents. That's all they do anymore is recruit presidents. But she has forced all of us and the discourse to move to a higher level about the future of higher education in this state. And she also is a statesperson in how she looks at these issues. And so we can always count on her as a person who believes strongly in the future of this state, who has a clear vision about the future welfare of this state and what institutions such as this one and the others that are part of IHL can do. So we're especially happy to have her here this afternoon.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Lee. We also have our First Lady, Mrs. Lee, with us in the audience today. This is one of the harder introductions for one of the easier persons I know to have to do. If I went over all of the high points of her career, you would think she was 85 years old. And as you can see, she's still young. I had several different bios, and I said, well, I'll boil this down and I'll boil that down, and it still won't say exactly what I know about Amy Whitten. Now, I can tell you on the front end that she is an Ole Miss graduate, both bachelor's degree and law school, and is an Ole Miss fan. But as conversations go, when they started leaking out who the names of possible board appointments might be, and Amy Whitten was one of them, I said, oh, good. And they said, well, she's an Ole Miss graduate. And I said, yeah, but I've heard her enough to know that she is 110% dedicated to the success of the state of Mississippi, and Mississippi State will be involved in that, and she'll recognize that fact. So I have come to appreciate her very much in that vein. You have a bio on her in your program. I'll touch on just some of the high points of that biography. She is principal in the Amy Whitten, attorney at law. Also, I guess where I know her best, the Whitten Group in Jackson, Mississippi, where she consults with 50 or better state agencies and organizations. And what she does so well is she introduces people and problems and solutions to each other, and simplifies them so well that people can actually go out and execute the ideas that she's arrived at by researching organizations. She also is an adjunct professor at the Ole Miss School of Law. She's taught also at the Mississippi College School of Law. She has worked as counsel and court administrator with the Mississippi Supreme Court. She's been an assistant attorney general for 6 years for the state of Mississippi. Numerous honors and awards. She was Mississippi Woman Lawyer of the Year in 2000. Won the Stennis Award for Excellence in 1991. She's a graduate of the State Executive Development Institute. I think probably the first one held here under Dr. Charles Washington. She has a great deal of professional service indicative of her dedication to bettering the state of Mississippi. She's co-chair of the Chief Justice's Task Force on Gender Fairness from 1998 to the present, Vice Chair of the Mississippi Task Force on Court Reform. She was Chair of the Mississippi Bar Judicial Administrative Section, Chair of the Mississippi Bar Criminal Law Section, has written a number of different books, manuals, and publications dealing with the workforce, the workplace in the state of Mississippi, and how to enhance the ability of workers in the state of Mississippi to understand and do their job. I could go on a great deal farther. I will stop here and give her time to speak. I'd also like to acknowledge Deanne Mosley, who is Special Assistant Attorney General and is here with Ms. Whitten today. Amy Whitten, come forward and speak to us.
Thank you, Marty. I appreciate that wonderful introduction, and I have to tell y'all what I told Ms. Coleman when she asked me to be a speaker here, and we began to prepare the paperwork, etc., and she told me what it was about. A friend of mine called me, I guess about a month ago, and said, "Have you seen the Mississippi State website lately?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And she said, "Well, you need to get on there and look there because they've got a picture of you draped in the American flag that would be good enough for you to run for governor." So I eased over there and found that the operation over here was very sophisticated and had made me look very wonderful and managed. I'm going to put her on my public relations staff if I can get her ever away from Mississippi State. But I was really pleased to get this opportunity and in talking to people about what appropriate remarks were at this series. I really wanted to do a couple of things today. I think it's expected, and I would like to describe to you in a little bit of detail my route of travel through public service. I think a lot of times, especially for students, it's interesting to see how many different ways there are to arrive in places that are meaningful in your career. And I've had a kind of a non-traditional climb here, so I would like to speak to that briefly. And then I'd also like to talk a little bit from my vantage point of what I think the real key challenges are for everyone in Mississippi who's currently trying to provide leadership, and in that I include every single person in this room, whether you're already in a professional leadership position or you're readying yourself for it. Before I do that, though, I really have to comment a little bit on Mississippi State. I was shocked when I was placed on the College Board. I wasn't even sure I knew what it was. I did know that the first telephone call I received, I was on vacation in Florida. And the governor called me and asked me if I would serve he said to me, "I'm looking for a good person to put on the College Board." And I said, "Well, do you want me to try to help you find somebody?" And he said, "No, not really." And at that point, he told me he would like for me to serve. I tell you that because there's a tremendous belief, I think, throughout Mississippi that these are highly sought-after positions, and I'm sure they are for a lot of people. The first telephone call I got after that was from my brother, who tracked me down and said, "Do you know, this is just wonderful?" And I said, "Well, I know, I think it's an honor, but I'm not real sure, what it's all about." And he said, "Do you have any idea how much better our seats in the stadium just got?" So I have to tell you that the membership means a great deal to different people. Since that time, I've been averaging about 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 sometimes days a month working on the board's business, and I tell people it's the most fabulous unpaid job I've ever had. But I did tell my brother recently that I thought these were the most expensive football tickets I had ever bought. You actually put it into an hourly rate. But one of the things that happened to me soon after I was placed on the board is I was invited over to Mississippi State to take a tour. And Mississippi State was the first campus I took an official visit to. And I spent a couple of days over here, and I'm just going to have to tell you the honest truth, not because I had any expectations. What was going on this campus just blew my mind. When they took me over to the Engineering Research Center and walked me through some of what was happening over there and took me over into some of the agricultural programs and into what was going on over here with the political science department and the service that's going on out of this university that's reaching out, I really was just really awed. And I really can tell you that since that day, I've not become any less awed with the quality that's over here. This university has a tremendous reach, really huge reach. And the aspirations that have been established over here from Dr. Zacharias and Dr. Portera and now Dr. Lee and whoever the president is to come have really set an incredibly, very high standard. And, I tell people all the time that there is no competition in my mind between Mississippi State and Ole Miss. Because the things that Mississippi State is offering this state, I don't believe we offer the state from Ole Miss. I'm convinced that the uniqueness of what Mississippi State offers is unmatched by any other school in this system, and that's the way it ought to be. And I will tell you the good news is when I finally got Mississippi State as one of my teams, I finally got where I had a team now that could beat Alabama up until this past year. You finally gave me a team that I could cheer for that actually could win and beat Alabama. So I have benefited in many ways from getting to know about your campus. The leadership is just exemplary. I've gotten to be good friends with Ms. Coleman, who really is just a visionary and has impact far further than this campus and far further than many of you may even know. Let me tell you a little bit about how I got here, and I'm not even sure I can tell you where here is. I graduated from law school in 1980. I had taught school for a couple of years after I got out of college. I was 21 years old, and I was teaching high school English to several people who were 22 years old. So my experience in the public sector school system was kind of challenging, but what really I knew deep in my heart I'd always wanted to do was I'd wanted to go to law school. And so after a couple of years of teaching, I did go back to law school and graduated from Ole Miss in 1980 and was privileged enough to get a clerkship with one of the Supreme Court justices. Many of y'all may be familiar with the Lee family down in Forest, Judge Roy Noble Lee and many other Lees down there who are judges, federal judges as well. If you want to appreciate how long ago 1981 could be, I was his first female law clerk, the first woman he had ever had to work for him in any capacity other than his secretary. And as he told me when I got there, he said, I have a wife, I have daughters, I've had secretaries, and I've had sisters. I don't know what you are. And I said to him, well, I don't either, so, we ought to get along fine. We had an age difference of 40-something years. And so we started that relationship, and from there, he gave me a tremendous appreciation for how rich jobs in the public sector could be. He had been a circuit judge, he had been a district attorney, he had been a Supreme Court justice and a school board member. He had served his own community in so many different ways. So when I got through with my clerkship, he encouraged me to go work for the Attorney General. He knew that I wanted to be a courtroom attorney, and I did. As I tell my own students in law school, you don't want to be a courtroom attorney unless you're awed by the sound of your own voice. And if you are, it's a good place to take yourself. And he told me, he said, if you want experience as quickly as you can get it, go to the Attorney General's office. Go to a public sector job. And that's the first place I really learned and had verified for me that oftentimes if you're in public service, you will get to have experiences that your friends who graduated with you that went to private sector experiences will wait 5 to 10 years to have. You will be pushed way out front of where people are. And that happened to me. They sent me to the Attorney General's office, and they sent me, believe it or not, because he encouraged me not to say, I want this job, to say, I want to work for the Attorney General's office. What are my possibilities? And I went there and began to work in the criminal division, which I never had any desire or even belief that I would ever do that. And the first job they gave me, they had one woman on the Attorney General's staff. She ran the criminal division. And she was a larger-than-life person. She was about 6'2", had a drama degree prior to getting a law degree, and could get excited enough about things that she once put her foot through the wall next to the copy machine, and her shoe dropped all the way down 6 floors and had to be fished out. So she was out there. And she put me in positions to do things that I had probably no business. You as taxpayers would probably have blanched if you had really known who was out there representing you and the age. But what it did was it began to push me toward a career as a prosecutor. And I realized real quickly I really liked that. You help people. You got to get into exciting situations. I don't think my parents always agreed with me when they, go to bed at night knowing I was trying to track a witness down in a bar in West Jackson somewhere. But it was an extremely exciting job. And out of that job grew an assignment that kind of capped my career with the Attorney General. I was placed in charge of the death penalty docket. I was 29 years old and was the first person that had ever been in charge of the state's death penalty prosecutions. And so for about the last 4 years that I worked there, that was pretty much my caseload. I got to appear in the United States Supreme Court twice, which most lawyers would give their whole careers to go once. I spent lots of time at Parchman. I actually was a visitor. I wasn't sent there for anything. I did come in and out when I wanted to. And in 1983, I witnessed the state's first execution as the representative for the state at Parchman, the first execution that had been held in our state in many years by gas chamber. And so, those are some pretty amazing experiences, I thought, even at the time they were. And at that point in time, the judge for whom I had clerked became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And he enticed me to come back down there as their first operating officer. I have to tell you, judges can kind of be full of themselves. Any of y'all that know judges are related to them. And they had for some time been running the court themselves, these 9 Supreme Court justices doing everything themselves, including judging. And right before they hired me, they had thrown the state auditor out of their office and told him not to come back because he was questioning some travel expenses they had. Well, that wasn't doing a whole lot to enhance their relationship with the auditor's office. So they thought maybe somebody else needs to run this operation and take over the legal department and let us be judges and only judges. And so I had the first job they'd ever had. There was no job description. Let me give you a tip. If anybody ever offers you a job with no job description, take it. Make it up. If you don't want to do it, no, I'm sorry, that really isn't in my job description. I want that. Bring it here. It's in my job description. So none of us quite knew what I was supposed to be doing, but I did it down there with Chief Justice Lee for about 6 years until he retired. And at that time, I had told him, I said, I want to do this with you. I'm really not sure I want to do it with anybody else. It's been a wonderful experience. But when we finish this, I'm going back to practicing law, purely. And when I left the court, I actually went looking for a Democratic law firm. And I told people I had to drive all the way to Oxford until I found one. And once I found a 9-member firm that had a lot of the same government-type interests that I did, I settled in there as a managing partner and was the managing partner for that firm for about 6 or 7 years, and then went out on my own. Since doing that, I practiced law to some degree. I was privileged enough to have some pretty big cases. I represented Dr. Lewis Nobles, who was president of Mississippi College, who had federal indictments years ago, represented the insurance commissioner, George Dale, in some cases involving the insurance industry. And then I really began to get fascinated with this idea that there were better ways for me to use my legal skills than litigation. I really began to feel very strongly that there was a lot to be said for prevention. You walk out of court with a client that you have won their case, and you say to them, well, this is really great, we won. And they look back at you and they say, yes, and it only took 3 years, and we paid you $33,000 and we didn't do anything wrong. It really became clear to me that many of the problems that ended up in the legal system were really people problems. They festered into something else because they weren't dealt with preventively, they weren't worked on at the front end. And so I decided to kind of take what I knew about government, because that's really truly been my whole career, to take that and try to mix it with these skills that I felt like were analytical and people-based, because persuasion is a lawyer's coin of the realm. It's the thing you have to understand. And so I began to work on my own and set up this whitten group on the side to kind of provide an organizational vehicle to do that. And since that time, I have had some of the most exciting experiences anyone could have. I've assisted organizations that were completely changing into other things. I've done some incredibly high-level investigations, very high up in organizations that had problems. And really, truly, I think it may be the best use of my legal skills that I've had since I got out of school. I've taught consistently for about the last 15 years, wherever I could squeeze it in around my own job responsibilities. And I think one of the saddest things to me right now is I currently am not teaching adjunct for Ole Miss, because that would be a conflict of interest for me to have a contract with that institution. So I'm going to start teaching at Mississippi College again in the spring, because Mississippi College being a private school, we don't have that situation. I have offices in Oxford and Jackson now, and when people say, well, where do you live? We see you in Jackson all the time. I say, well, I live on the interstate. And, if you're going to be a public servant these days, or you're going to be a professional with a reach of any length, just get used to living on the interstate. Just learn where the right mile markers are and where the best Stuckies are and things like that. And it just gets to be a fairly regular commute to me back to Oxford. Now, those experiences for me defied a lot of things that I was told by people about what career I should seek. Lots of us think we should have a 5-year plan. I talk to people who think they have a 10-year plan. I never had a 5-year plan that got past year 2. Without turning into something else. And what I really began to understand was maybe I could save myself some hassle if I didn't focus so hard on a 5-year plan, and I started identifying other things. And so I want to share with you, these are just my opinion, and you're certainly free to disagree with them, and might could even cause me to change them if we could talk about it at length. But there's some core principles that I think are very important to people who want to try to find a way to serve in the public sector and have a rich professional experience while you're doing it. The first one of those is, don't look for jobs. Look for sets of experiences. Don't bind yourself by saying, I want to be an assistant district attorney, or I want to work for the Attorney General's office in the civil litigation division, or I want to be an accountant in this particular type firm. Ask yourself what type of experiences you want. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted on big cases. I wanted on the big cases. I wanted on constitutional cases. I wanted to be on, and I didn't care where I was. I didn't care if I was carrying somebody's briefcase up the steps after everybody else had sat down at the table. I wanted to be in the room where the big stuff was going on. And once I accepted that as a definition, instead of saying I want this job, it was amazing how many more opportunities I had, because I could look and see, look how much of what I want to do these people do. And so instead of saying I'm applying for this job, I would go in, when I went to the Attorney General's office, I said, I want to apply for a job with your organization. Eventually, I would really like to have these experiences. Principle 2, don't let your job description bind your experiences. I went into the criminal division, and the first thing I said to the Attorney General was, if I can keep my caseload up, can I litigate civil cases? Because I didn't want to only do criminal cases. I wanted to grow on the other side, and I said, can I get on a civil case as a backup lawyer every 3 or 4 times through the rotation if I can keep my own stuff current? Sure. That method got me assigned to the then Attorney General, Bill Elaine, when he brought the separation of powers lawsuit and sued the legislature over their service on boards and commissions, one of the biggest constitutional cases ever. I got to do the research on that case, and it was thrilling. And it really oftentimes doesn't matter if your job says you do this. If you find the right people who are willing to let you stretch, they'll let you come over there for a while. People in the public sector, I can tell you, and Marty can certainly relate to this, always looking for good help. You know, we'll take it anywhere we can find it. I have people call me now and say, I'm home for the summer and I don't really have to have a job. My parents said I could do what I wanted to. Can I come hang out in your office and see what you do? Sure. And, you know, we'll give you something to do right up to the apex of your abilities. We'll let you go as far as you want to. So don't be bound by what the limits of a job description say. Don't look for a job. Look for sets of experiences. Another principle is find something that lights your passion. I don't know if y'all, passion is a real common word in our vocabulary these days, and occasionally I like to go back and actually look up these words and see, what the actual meaning was before we started to apply them in all kinds of situations. My favorite definition of passion is a feeling of such extent that it evokes action. Now think about that as applied to something you do for a living. I love what I do. I would do it if nobody paid me. I'd have to find another way to try to pay my bills, I think, but many of us are blessed at times in our lives to have a position or be a place or be working with someone that really, truly ignites your emotions to the point that you just have to do something about it. Public servants who are the best at what they do are lit up by what they do. Sometimes it takes a couple of moves to find the right place for that, but find something that you feel that way about, and if you don't, keep looking. Because there will be something. If you're going to the public sector, you have a passion for serving people, that's clear. And the fit may not be right the first few places you try to get that. That brings me to my other principle, persevere. And by that, persevere in my vernacular meant patience. I have never been a patient person. I was probably, the man I worked for who was my first mentor was as patient as Methuselah. I would go in there with things that needed to be done. I'd have a clear answer. The answer would be very clear to me. And I would say, okay, Judge, we can either do this or this. And every time I did that, he would say, well, let me think about it. It just frustrated me out of my mind. I felt like a jet engine that was in idle, at about 9,000 RPM. And so eventually I saw the pattern of what he was doing. He lived in Forest, Mississippi, worked in Jackson. And he applied what I call the 90-mile rule. We couldn't make a decision unless it drove 45 miles home to Forest that night and 45 miles back to Jackson the next morning. We never made it the same day. And over time, he really began to teach me there's an option C. Remember, I had A and D. You can do A or you can do D. The operative word being do. And he taught me that there was option C, which was called wait for more information. And when I began to apply that in my career, it was amazing how much better it got. Because what happened was, when I got tired of something, I didn't leave. And there's depth of experience that you can only have, there's growth that you can only have if you don't leave when it gets boring. If you don't decide, well, I've used this for all it can be and I need to take my toys and move on to another place. Persevere, look for what means something to you, but wait for it. And I think that's a real tough thing nowadays because the immediacy of expectation. I talk to people all the time who, well, I've been doing this for 6 months. When am I going to get to be something else? This seeking experiences helps you move out a little bit. It helps you widen your experience without having to wait on someone to vacate a position so that there's a position for you to elevate into. Let me tell you, if I can take a point of personal preference here, and I think if you got the pulpit, you're always entitled to preach for at least 2 or 3 minutes. I have grandfather's a Baptist preacher, so if I'm trying to hold myself back, I promise I'm not going to pass the plate. I won't try to get that passion. We won't take up a love offering or anything like that, but we might rededicate our lives. We might go that far, so be prepared. Let me tell you why I think this whole concept of public service, of leaders donating themselves to the public sector, is so critical right now. The world that we are asked to lead right now, and I'm not just talking to people who are leading at a high level right now, I'm talking about people who are getting ready to assume and absorb leadership roles and are preparing yourselves for those roles. Look at what the world that you're going to lead is going to look like. It's going to be marked by 2 things more than anything else: diversity and unpredictability. We're clearly in the most diverse society we've ever been in, and we've only seen the beginning of that diversity. 1 out of every 10 people who lives with us in the United States was not born in the United States. The fastest growing age group in the United States right now is over 85. By the time they take me to the nursing home, which I hope will be a while from now, there will be more grandparents in the United States than there are grandchildren. By the end of this decade, more people will work from their homes than work in a building away from home. Look at the layers and levels of diversity far beyond what we have always thought about as simple diversity of race and gender. It's the most rich area that we will ever be asked to lead, and people will be very diverse, which will require that we have very diverse skills. Look at how fast your world is going to change. The unpredictability of what we're going to be asked to lead is we're going to have to change it on a dime. We're going to have to scrap it and replace it repeatedly. The average length of time that a person works for a private sector company right now, the average nationally, is 3 years. Over the course of an average person's lifetime, they will have 6 to 8 major job changes that could almost constitute career changes. Now, for many of us in the baby boomer era, it's hard for me to really absorb that that's true, because my model coming forward is people go to work and they retire 40 years later and they get to go watch. And that really isn't the way the world works anymore. But that's the world we're going to be drawn into. And the challenges that come out of that world, guess what? The newest challenges we will face are the oldest challenges we have ever faced. I want you to think about that. The oldest challenges that our country has faced, the oldest challenge is intolerance. In a country that was founded where everyone was presumed equal, we spent and still spend years and years and years and years trying to establish equality. In a country that during the Civil War that knew a house divided against itself cannot stand, we still bear tribute to negative experience after negative experience throughout the United States that marks the fact that as far as we'd like to think we've come, we haven't. In an age when we are the most diverse population to ever live on the planet, together, closely, we're less than 8 months out from the greatest example of terrorism and intolerance that any of us have ever seen. These challenges haven't gone away. The issues that might have been our forefathers' treatment of Native Americans, the slavery issue, the Civil War, Hitler, World War II, those things are still here. They're just now going to be identified as things like racial profiling, hate crimes, September 11th type terrorism. The challenge that leaders have right this minute is to unify, to really truly try to give body to these thoughts that we keep carrying around, that we are somehow making tremendous progress. We're making progress on people actually being tolerant and accepting of one another. But I still consider this to be the biggest issue that we have, not only in Mississippi. September 11th didn't occur in Mississippi. It did to us mentally. Every state in the United States is bearing this very same challenge. And the thing that you have, especially those of you who are getting ready to start a leadership career, is you have the status quo of having lived in the most diverse society so far. You're way ahead of where many of us started in our own understanding of what diversity really meant. And the other thing that you have that maybe we haven't always had is a real appreciation of how technology can be used to cement relationships. The older I get, and every time I say the older I get, I start to feel like a fossil, and I'm not that old, but I keep referring to myself that way. I'm going to elevate my own age by speaking that way. But one of the things that I know, the older I get, is there is no more important skill in a leader than the ability to build, nurture, and sustain relationships through difficult experiences. The reason leaders are solid, the reason that John Stennis was who he was, is because he valued his integrity and the commitment of being real to the person on the other side of the experience, to the point that the win didn't matter. There's a great story that when he was running for one of his re-elections in 82, when he actually had a serious opponent, that the people who were putting together his campaign were trying to tell him that he needed to do this to win, and you need to do this to win, and he cut them off short, and he said, wait a minute, we don't have to win. Marking his whole 40-year career as a senator by saying, this is who I am, and this is going to be the way I'm going to treat you. And if I win now, fine, and if I don't, you and I will have a relationship that will support my ability to do something later. Relationships are it. And right this minute, in our state, we have a small state. We have a lot of problems, but we've got a sizable experiment that can work. We're not trying to make dramatic changes in a 10 million person place. The other thing we have, how are Southerners on relationships? It drives us, doesn't it? 5 minutes into any conversation you have it with a Southerner, what are they going to be asking you? Well, I knew a Coleman up there and so-and-so. Are you related to them? Well, I went to a school with a guy named Smith. Are you related to him? Everything we know in our realm is about connections, one-to-one. Those are relationships. Let me urge you to use your relationship abilities, these real leadership skills, one-to-one, to really affect change. If you want to change our state for the better, don't try to change the system. Because organizational change is nothing but multiple individual change. Change people one at a time, and they will change the system. That's the way that leadership works in a state like ours. Use those skills on a couple of things. Education is the future of us elevating our people. That's just very clear. We can say it all we want to, but if we really look at the numbers, it ought to become a passion. Fewer than 20% of the people who live in our state have anything beyond a high school diploma. 1 out of every 4 children under the age of 5 lives in a home below the poverty level. These are amazing numbers. If you graduate from high school in the United States, the average income you will make over your life is $22,000. If you graduate for college, it's $48,000. Now, we're working hard on education. There's some incredibly talented people on all the 8 campuses in this state that are doing everything they know how to do to elevate our people through education. But leaders at every level, even if you're not working on the system, I'm going to give you a challenge. before we can educate anybody, we have got to light an absolute fire of demand for education. We can put it out there all we want to. We've got to create a thirst. We've got to create a demand that we can't satisfy if we really want to see and measure ourselves on a standard for what success in the educational arena is. Apply your talents to crises. Now, you know, crisis is kind of a negative word, but if you actually look at it to the Chinese, the ideogram for crisis is combined of two symbols, danger and opportunity. And if you look at the things that we have in our state, you look at where we need to take it, you look at the situation that many people find themselves in, you look at healthcare, you look at education, we have crises. And if you want to be a public servant, look at them as dangerous opportunities. Because they are dangerous if we don't satisfy them. But they are tremendous opportunities for you to serve. Hitch yourself to somebody you think is really good. People tell me all the time, I wish I'd had some mentors. I wish I'd had this person for a mentor. Go ask. I've been flattered about maybe once or twice in my life when somebody actually called me and said, you don't know me, but so-and-so told me that I should come see you. And they will come and sit down and say, I want to have these kinds of experiences, and I want to know if you'll be my mentor, if you'll help me. If you'll help me figure out how to get there. Now, how many people do you think are going to say no when somebody comes up and says, you know, I think you're great and I want to be like you? You know, hitch yourself to one of these public servants that you think has really got it going on. If you're doing nothing other than carrying the ream of paper down the copy machine to run their stuff off so that they can take it somewhere else, get in that reflected passion and pick these opportunities and just watch for places that open up to serve. I never thought I would have this job as a member of this board. Never. I never even gave it a second thought. And all I know was it offered itself to me as an opportunity to serve. The legacy left up here for this particular Collins series by Mr. Collins and also by Senator Stennis is so powerful. But you know, those people weren't a whole lot different from us when they started out. Senator Stennis came off the farm down in Kemper County. I came from 9 miles out of a town of 400 people off the farm in DeSoto County. And, you know, the skills that you have to really get started as a leader, you don't get those in school. I mean, you build them from other experiences. School builds them up further. I hope every single person in this room, especially the people that think they want a career, please try it in the public sector. It's been the richest experience of my life, and I think offered a chance to do anything in the private sector today, I can't think of one single thing that I would do, one single minute that I would spend differently than the way that these jobs let me spend my time now. I want to thank y'all for letting me come up here. I came up here to you from the USM presidential search, which is going on in Hattiesburg, even as we speak. And I'm proud to say that I have been asked as the only non-Mississippi State graduate to serve on the Mississippi State Presidential Search Committee, which will be chaired on the campus by Ms. Coleman. I don't know if y'all took me as a token or if you really think I have something to offer, but you know I'm not going to not say something, so I will have an opinion to offer. I want to turn the program back over to Marty if that's appropriate, or if you'd like for me to take some questions, or if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to do that. Okay. I don't like your questions. You don't ask fair questions.
I always have to get started. Given your experience with former General Lane and separation of powers case and so forth, you care to comment on the current debacle with General Waller and the Supreme Court suit, and where do you think that is?
Really fascinating. I'm sure all of y'all know to what he's referring, that, you know, this issue of service in both branches of government. And I'll have to share with you a little funny story. You can get yourself in those situations without even realizing it. When I was appointed to the college board, I was chairing the Commission on Judicial Performance, which is a commission that disciplines judges and receives complaints on judges. And really, it took me a couple of months, and all of a sudden it was like one of those aha experiences. I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought, I'm in violation of separation of powers. I have to do. because the Commission on Judicial Performance is one of the few agencies that actually is listed as a judicial branch agency, and so I had to kind of get myself out of that in a hurry before I caused any problems. But I think we are destined to have, within our constitutional framework, these kinds of challenges. I wouldn't even dare to voice an opinion on which way I think that should go, but I believe those kinds of things are the fact that they pull themselves up out of the Constitution so immediately and they're identified so quickly is such a tribute to our constitutional system. I mean, this government that we have was described by the founders as the great experiment. The founding fathers hoped that this model would last for 20 years until 1800, so that people who really knew what this country needed for permanency would be able to make a decision, and we still have it. Tremendous flexibility, and a tremendous, almost inherent enforcement that I think the separation of powers brings up. I would be interested to know what General Lane thinks about it. I'd like to ask him that question. I imagine he has an opinion about it, don't you? Let me tell y'all a quick story. I have to tell you one story on Marty. Marty and I, in the last presidential election that lasted for, 3 months? Marty and I were asked to go to public radio and to be the on-air commentators election night. And Marty was going to be commenting on the presidential election, and I was supposed to comment on all these Supreme Court justice seats we had open that were running at the time. And we got down there, and of course Marty, kind of got in a white-hot taste there because all his numbers started coming in, going every which way, and it didn't even appear that we were going to have a race that would end. The Supreme Court numbers were kind of out there too. Everybody knows the sitting Supreme Court Chief Justice, Lenore Prater from up here, was in number trouble early and eventually lost her seat. And I could still remember that they were coming in there and calling all these people that were running and shoving the microphone at us and saying, well, fill up some airtime. We got so-and-so on the phone. Interview him about he's running 17 votes ahead of so-and-so in such and such county. And so they got me on the phone with someone who will remain unnamed, who was running for one of these Supreme Court seats. And let's just say that if he had a light, it wasn't shining very bright that any of us could find in the legal community. And so, they throw me the microphone and say, we've got this guy on the telephone. And so I get on there to start talking to him, and I ask him how he feels about the fact that he is very surprisingly ahead in this race as a challenger. And the first thing he does is he says he doesn't know if he's going to talk to me or not because the media hadn't done anything good. I said, no, wait, I'm not the media. I had never been to media a day in my life. I'm an attorney like you. Then he went on to talk about his positions on everything. And I looked down the table where I was up down there trying to really be professional as I could be, not being a professional journalist. And Marty's sitting down there at the other end of the table with a legal pad held up like this, on which he has written, what is this guy anyway, a justice court judge? I mean, these were the kinds of messages he was offering me down there in support for my commentary. So I didn't get to do that to him because he didn't have any numbers to report until the following January, by which time we were out of there. Other questions or comments? Yes.
It's fascinating just listening to you speak of the law and you think that and all its implications. I'm just interested, in my opinion, one of the hottest topics concerning the Mississippi court right now is the issue of court reform. Just interested to see how you feel about the situation as there's a president and what steps particularly to take in the future.
I think that there are issues in the law that deal with damages that need to be addressed. I think the phrase tort reform is becoming such a lightning bolt that rather than dealing with specifics that we really do need to look at, I personally think we need to do something with punitive damages. And I don't mean take them away from someone. Obviously, they serve an incredibly valid purpose. If you didn't have punitive damages, you would not be able to affect change on people like Ford Motor Company and the Pinto station wagon explosion and things like that. But there certainly are ways to deal with those that don't necessarily constitute a windfall to an individual plaintiff. Maybe you could cap punitive damages, give a portion to the plaintiff, and donate the excess back into some sort of decent public need. Lord knows education could take whatever dollars we could get our hands on. I think there are particular business-related items we need to look at. We need to look at some things on defendants being allowed to get change of venue in civil cases, so that you don't end up in a situation, or plaintiffs being able to get change of venue in particular cases. I'm troubled by just the mantra tort reform, because I think in a lot of ways it's become so broad that we've lost the fact that there are very legitimate pieces of legislation that could pass, probably if they didn't get tagged right on the front end. Now, this system we have, this jury system, serves a tremendous purpose. And one of the ways that really distinguishes our system and elevates it throughout the free world. So I think we have to be really careful. That's why I would rather see incremental changes than us race in there with some sort of major code change and then be looking back trying to figure out what we really did later because we got swept up by the notion. But I do think it's important. I think we need to do something in some particular areas. Other questions? Well, if not, then I'd like to thank you again for letting me be up here, and I look forward to coming back and helping you pick your president.
Ms. Whitten, it's obvious that you've been very successful in every aspect of your life, and you have always made a tremendous impact on anything that you've done, it seems like, and we would like to express our appreciation to you for improving the quality of life for the state of Mississippi here and for continuing to improve higher education and making it a top priority in our state. And on behalf of the Congressional and Political Research Center and the Senate Institute of Government and the Senate Government Association, we'd like to express our appreciation for you participating in the College Speaker Series. I'd also like to thank each of you for coming today and attending our program. I'd like to invite y'all to stay for our reception afterwards and maybe have an opportunity to speak with Ms. Whitten. And this time, this will conclude our program. Thank you.